We good? All right. We got one more coming in. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's 2:30, so I thought I'd get started. We've got an hour set aside to talk about special needs trusts. How exciting is that, right? This is my fourth, maybe fifth year presenting on this topic here, and what I've found in my past presentations is that if I stand up here and talk to myself for an hour, I'm going to bore you guys and more than likely confuse you. So what I've done is I put together a presentation that's just the bare bones basics about special needs trusts and some related topics. Because we have, I think, a small enough crowd, I prefer it to be interactive. So if I'm talking about something, you have a question, you want to run something by me, please let me know, raise your hand, and I'm happy to stop and go over it. That being said, I do not have handouts today. I have in the past, but with COVID and trying to save the trees, I thought I'd try something different. You guys let me know if it works. All of the stuff is on my website. Our law firm is Special Needs Lawyers. The website is specialneedslawyers.com. Any handouts that I would have given you will be there, posted under our resources tab, along with this short slideshow as well. So feel free to go there and get those. If you really want something paper in your hands today, if you make it down to our table in the exhibit hall, we do have some there, but it's limited, so it could run out. That being said, if you have any additional questions after, I'll try to stick around. If we don't have enough time to answer everybody's, if we don't have enough time for me to stick around, that's my email address. It goes directly to me. You can email me anytime, and I'm happy to answer it if I can. If I can, I'll let you know, okay? So I want to start with, first of all, how many of you have heard of a special needs trust before reading my topic? Awesome. How many have a special needs trust or have one for your family member? Awesome. So you guys are way ahead of the curve. For those of you who have never heard of a special needs trust, hopefully we'll learn something today. We are being filmed, so if you do ask a question, I'm probably going to try to repeat it so it gets on the camera. All right. In its most basic, what is a special needs trust? Well, it's a trust. For those of you who don't know what a trust is, it's just a legal document, but it's a legal document that can potentially own or hold assets. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, in the case of a special needs trust, if you have that legal document and it's properly drafted, it can do all these things for the beneficiary, and we'll learn what a beneficiary is later. But it can benefit a person with disabilities. But the main purpose is the second one, and it's to maintain eligibility for public assistance programs, and then ultimately, hopefully, enhance the quality of life of that person who's receiving those benefits. When we talk about benefits, what are we talking about? Well, there's generally two categories of benefits we talk about when it comes to disabled individuals. We're talking about a monthly income stream that they might receive, and then we're talking about some type of health care or health insurance to help pay for their medical needs. These are the different types of income streams that a disabled individual could receive through Social Security. The first one is called Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI. A lot of us have probably heard of this. SSDI is a benefit that you can receive if you've paid into the system. So you've worked, you've paid enough into the system, but prior to becoming the age of retirement, where you would normally start drawing on a Social Security retirement check, you become disabled. And in that case, you could receive a Social Security Disability Insurance or SSDI check. Then we have supplemental security income, SSI. You guys are probably all familiar with that, or at least heard of it. SSI is a check you can receive if you've become disabled, but you haven't paid into the system. Maybe you didn't work enough. Maybe you were never able to work. So you didn't have the necessary payments into the system, the necessary quarters, as they call it, of work history to qualify for SSDI. You may be able to qualify for SSI. SSI, the difference being, because you haven't paid into the system, is a welfare benefit. So being a welfare benefit, there's going to be income and asset limitations to qualify for that. So not only do you have to be disabled, you have to meet their resource limits. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a slide in a minute. And then the last one is what's called a disabled adult child or childhood disability benefits. It's weird that they phrase it this way, disabled adult child. What that means is it's a child of an adult, it's an adult who is a child of an individual who has paid into the system. So you're a parent, you have a child who is born with a disability, you pay into the system, you're working, and then at some point you either become disabled you become retired, you start drawing your retirement Social Security, or if you pass away, there's a benefit that your disabled adult child can receive based on your Social Security paycheck. So it happens a lot. You'll have someone who's receiving SSI, and right now that's $794. That's the maximum SSI check there is. And something happens. Their parent becomes disabled, their parent retires, or their parent passes away, and all of a sudden their check goes up. That's the reason why. They're eligible for a benefit based on their parent's check. So those are the different income streams that you can receive. Yes, sir?
Yes, but you said your check would go up with SSI take the other way.
So right, yeah, you're not going to get both. The question is the SSI will lower, but your total amount you receive from Social Security typically would be more than what you would receive from SSI. So if you're receiving the disabled adult child benefit, in a lot of cases, not always, if the parent didn't work a whole lot, then maybe the check isn't more than SSI. But in a lot of cases, if the check's more than SSI, you're right, you'll lose your SSI check, but you'll get this check instead.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Do you know if the spouse is receiving SSDI, if that will impact the child that receives it?
The question is if your spouse is receiving SSDI, would it affect, is the spouse the parent of the child?
No, like for example, I'm the parent, but a long time ago, before I received SSDI, they told me that my wife could receive SSDI. And so of course at that time she was working. Now she's retired. I mean, there's probably too much information. But
Yeah. Yeah, so she would only get a check, your spouse would only get a check if they were disabled, and it would be based on their work history. Yep. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
When do I let them know that I have a special needs child that might benefit from that?
From Social Security, you mean? So you can apply for Social Security at any point in which you think the individual is eligible. So if you have a minor child, but you have a parent who's still working, they're not retired, disabled, or have passed away, they may not be eligible for any benefit even though they're disabled, because SSI, until you reach the age of 18, is going to deem the parent's income and assets against the child. So in that case, you'd wait till the child was 18. They're now on their own for Social Security purposes and eligibility purposes, and at that point, you could apply for SSI. Now, just to add to that, though, I say as soon as possible because, let me go back, that last benefit, disabled adult child benefit, in order to qualify for it, you have to show Social Security that the adult child, the disabled individual, was disabled prior to age 22. So you want to get it into the system right away, even if they're not going to be eligible for SSI for some other reason. Let's say they have a bunch of money or won the lottery. If you want them to get that benefit in the future, you have to have them shown that they were disabled prior to 22. Now, if you have enough medical records and things, you can go back and a lot of times establish that disability prior to 22, but it's a little bit more difficult. So it's an important distinction.
One more question and I think I'm done. Regarding income, have you dealt with any situations whereby a military retirement gets passed on to the disabled adult child or disabled child?
So the question is, if you have a military retirement, are the disabled child eligible for any of that? You know, that's a good question. I think there are circumstances where they are eligible for it.
I know mine's going to get passed on, but you don't know whether it's going to factor into this.
Well, yeah, so that income does factor in determining whether they're eligible for the welfare benefits because it's income that they're receiving. And we'll get to this in a second. I have a little chart, but certain benefits are not affected by how much money you have. Certain benefits are earned benefits, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So let me get through this real quick, and then maybe it'll kind of clear up some of the questions. All right, the other category of benefits we're looking at to protect with a special needs trust potentially is that medical benefit, right? And these are the different types of medical benefits that someone potentially who's disabled could have. One is Medicare. Medicare we typically think of for our older adults. We turn 65, we get Medicare insurance. But there's ways, and you'll see, I think, in the next slide, yes, you'll see how someone potentially younger than 65 could get on Medicare. Medicaid, right? Medicaid has a number of programs. The most common way to get Medicaid is through SSI. If you're receiving $1, just even $1 of SSI, you're eligible for Medicaid in Florida. And when I say Medicaid, I'm talking about Medicaid health insurance. There's Medicaid waiver programs. Those of you who have children with disabilities may be familiar with the iBudget waiver here in Florida. It used to be called the DD, or Developmental Disabilities Waiver. I think they're here. It's through the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. That's another Medicaid program that someone with disabilities could qualify for. And then there's private insurance through ACA. And the reason I put that up there, ACA being the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, is that there's some circumstances where it makes sense to shop for private health insurance. They have subsidies for folks who meet certain income criteria where that it could be cheaper just to get private health insurance in certain circumstances. So that's the only reason I put that. So I created this little matrix. On the left-hand side, the blue circle is what I call the earned benefits. Somebody paid for these, right? Somebody paid into the system, whether it was a parent or the individual themselves. They worked. It was taken out of their paycheck every month. They earn these benefits. On the right-hand side are our needs-based benefits, our welfare benefits. Maybe you didn't pay up into the system, and so these are just coming from general tax revenue. So on the left-hand side, we have SSDI, our typical Social Security retirement. There's survivor's benefits. We're not going to talk about that, but there's survivor benefits for children, minor children, and adults. And then disability insurance, our SSDI, and our disabled adult child benefits. Again, these are earned benefits. If you're receiving Social Security retirement, Social Security doesn't ask you how much money you have in your bank account. You earn that benefit, right? So there's no asset or income limitation for someone receiving Social Security retirement. Social Security disability, same thing. You earn that benefit. If you're disabled and unable to work, it doesn't matter how much money is in your bank account. That is the same for the disabled adult child benefit. So whereas someone might be receiving SSI, SSI is a welfare benefit. SSI, you can't have more than $2,000 in assets to qualify for that program. Well, if they ever switch over to SSDI or DAC because a parent retires, in that case, that asset limitation goes away. You're not worried about it. Now, you may be worried about it for other reasons, like Medicaid programs, but for the SSDI or the DAC benefits, there is no asset limitation. Now, there is an income limitation for somebody who's receiving disability benefits. If you're working, earning income, they may not consider you disabled. So keep that in mind. And then I'll get to you real quick. The last one is in Medicare. Medicare is an earned benefit. If you've paid into the system, you turn 65, you're going to get Medicare. The other ways you can get Medicare, though, is if you become disabled prior to your retirement age and you start receiving SSDI, after a 2-year wait, you're eligible for Medicare. The same is for DAC benefits. If you're a disabled adult child and your parent retires, becomes disabled, or passes away, you'll start getting that DAC benefit. After 2 years, you'll be eligible for Medicare. Why is that important? Well, typically, from a general medical insurance perspective, Medicare is a lot better than Medicaid. And then there's this little section in the middle. I call it concurrent benefits. It's an overlap. There are circumstances where you could be getting something from every quadrant of these circles. For instance, if you're receiving an SSDI benefit or a DAC benefit that's below what the maximum federal benefit rate or the maximum SSI check is, SSI will kick in a couple extra bucks to get you up to the maximum benefit rate, which is currently $794. So you could be getting a check from DAC or SSDI. You could be getting a check from SSI. We said earlier, SSI after $1 gets you a Medicaid, and then after 2 years of getting SSDI, you're getting Medicare. So that's how all those work together. So those are the benefits that we're talking about. Again, just to quickly, eligibility for SSI, there's a level of care or medical need. You have to be disabled. Social Security has a 5-step sequential process by which they go through to determine if you're disabled. You have to be disabled or over the age of 65 or older to qualify for SSI. And then because it's a welfare benefit, there's resource limits, both asset and income limits. Again, $2,000. And then from an income standpoint, every dollar of unearned income that you receive is going to reduce your SSI check by $1. If you're earning income on SSI, for every $2 that you earn, they'll reduce your SSI check by $1. Yes, ma'am.
So, my son is under 18, benefits under my husband's disability.
Mm-hmm.
So when he turns 18, he just goes through a qualification for SSDI?
So yeah, if your husband's disabled, yes, correct.
So then I don't have to worry about any of those assets.
Right. If he's receiving the disabled adult child benefit, it's not an SSI benefit. If he's not on Medicaid, then you're right. There's no resource limitations for your son. With SSI and most Medicaid programs, not all, but most Medicaid programs, there's penalty transfers, or there's transfers for penalties. So if you do have someone who has more than $2,000, one thing you can't do is just give the money away, right? In most circumstances, there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, you can't. And so that's where a special needs trust comes into play, and that's why we create these trusts. A traditional trust, though, a revocable living trust or irrevocable trust, if it's not a special needs trust, is typically counted as an asset for purposes of eligibility in these programs. And did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I did. As far as when you become eligible for Medicare, aren't you also eligible for Medicaid as a supplemental in a lot of cases?
So the question is when you become eligible for Medicare, does it also make you eligible for Medicaid? Possibly, right? You can, correct. There's a lot of Medicaid programs. For instance, the I-Budget Waiver Program. So folks with developmental disabilities who are on the I-Budget Waiver Program, if they have a parent who becomes disabled, retired, or passes away, they may get this DAC, or Disabled Adult Child Benefit. In that case, they're going to start getting Medicare as their primary health insurance, but they're still getting benefits through APD on the I-Budget Waiver. So yeah, you're right. They'd have Medicaid in that case as well.
Do they have to wait 2 years too?
For the Medicare, yes. The question was, do they have to wait 2 years? For Medicare, yes, you'd have to wait 2 years to start getting it. So in the meantime, you're just going to still be on your Medicaid to cover that. This is a chart that's put out by DCF. It used to be a lot more helpful. They've changed it recently, and so it's not that great. But it just gives you the asset and income limitations for the different Medicaid programs. The one that I think would be most relevant to this group is going to be down here. Where is it? Well, it's right here. It's the Home and Community-Based Services Program, which is what the I-Budget falls under. And so there's an income limitation of $2,382 a month to qualify for that program, and an asset limitation of $2,000.
Keep in mind, a lot of med waiver coordinators are not aware of this yet.
She said, keep in mind, a lot of med waiver coordinators are not aware of this. So if they aren't, they'll learn once DCF learns, and they tell you you're not eligible. So yeah, be careful there. And so those are the reasons we do a special needs trust, right? We're trying to preserve those benefits. And to get into special needs trust, the name of the presentation is the ABCs and 123's of SNTs. Well, the 123's, I don't know what the 2 would be, but the 1 and 3 is first party and third party. Those are the 2 basic different types of special needs trusts. And I'm sorry, I thought it was a question. In the question whether it should be a first party or a third party special needs trust is determined by where does the money come from, right? A first party or self-settled special needs trust is when an individual who's receiving benefits has money themselves. And we'll talk about where that could come from. And a third party special needs trust is when the money's coming from someone other than the person receiving benefits, like a parent who may want to leave an inheritance or something like that. All right, in general, I just put this up here, so if you hear these terms, maybe you'll remember this. What are the parties to a trust? There's the settlor or grantor, sometimes called trustor. It's just the person that's setting up the trust, the person who's signing the legal document saying, I'm making this trust into existence. The trustee is the person who oversees whatever's in the trust. It could be a person, it could be a corporation, it could be a bank, a nonprofit. And then the beneficiary is the most important person. That's our individual who's on Medicaid, who we're using the funds in the trust to enhance their quality of life. All right, we're going to start with third-party special needs trust. Again, set up by someone other than the individual, right, who's receiving disability benefits or Medicaid. It could be a family member, friend, it could be anybody, any third party. Anybody but the person receiving benefits can set up a third-party special needs trust. There's generally a trust for each specific beneficiary. However, there's what are called pooled trusts that can have many beneficiaries, and we can talk about those a little bit later. And one of the big differences between the first party and the third party trust, because you're probably wondering, what does it matter if I do a first party versus a third party, is that a third party trust, upon the passing of the beneficiary, the individual receiving benefits, there is no Medicaid payback. And the reason that is again, the money was never theirs. It was left to them for their benefit. But if there's anything left when they pass away, whoever set up the trust gets to decide, I want this money to go to these other individuals or entities. Yes, sir?
Does it have to be family members?
It doesn't. No, anybody, you mean setting up the trust?
I'm talking about the benefit, after the
Person pass.
before disability passes,
Mhm.
the beneficiary of the trust, right?
Mhm.
The final beneficiary, does it have to be a family member, can it be anybody?
So the question is if after the beneficiary of the third-party special needs trust passes away, who can get the money? Does it have to be a family member? And the answer is no. It can be you as the person setting up the trust gets to decide where that money goes. It can be charities. It can be family members. It can be your next door neighbor. It could be me if you guys want to be real generous. Yeah, no, you get to decide that. Third-party special needs trust, you can set one up. You can fund it now, or you can set one up, or you can fund it later. So a lot of folks, parents, they have an individual, a child with special needs or disabilities. They're taking care of that person, but they want to make sure when they pass away that they're set up in a way that they're not going to lose their benefits, but still get to benefit from any inheritance that they otherwise would have got. It goes into a special needs trust, but maybe it doesn't go in until they pass away. So you set up the trust and you fund it later. That's what that means. You can set up the trust and fund it now. Maybe there's somebody who did a fundraiser for their family member, a GoFundMe. Who knows? You can set up the special needs trust now and put that money in now. And then maybe later mom and dad leave more money when they pass away. I'm sorry, did I see the hand back there?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Good.
Question. My son is only 5. He
Uh-huh.
receives no benefits whatsoever.
Okay.
We have private insurance, we don't have Medicaid, nothing.
Yeah.
But my husband and I have been thinking about doing a special needs trust to put like his retirement,
Sure.
anything that, or house, everything.
Right.
Let's say we pass away before he's an adult.
Right.
He gets to the adult life age, and he's incapable of working because he has this trust, this property or
Right.
he's gonna be able to get benefits, for example, Medicaid, for more to
Correct.
pay for therapy and things like that, or no, by having all these.
Right. No, so I think I understand the question, but I'm going to repeat it. She's asking if she has a minor child who's not receiving any benefits now, and she's asking if you and the father pass away, and you have a special needs trust, will they still be able to qualify for benefits? Right. Yes. That's the whole reason you do this trust. Well, I say whole reason. The primary reason you would do this trust. There's another added benefit to trust as well that I didn't really talk about, but it's maybe they need the benefits, maybe they don't. Maybe there's going to be $10 billion in this trust. And so, okay, yeah, it's a special needs trust. That's fine. We can get the Medicaid, but maybe we don't need it. Maybe, though, the person doesn't need the Medicaid because they have so much money in the trust, but maybe they aren't incapable of managing the money themselves. The trust allows somebody else, an entity, a bank, a family member, whoever it is, to then control that money for them and manage it for them. So that's the other benefit for the trust as well. In your case, because your child is a minor, they're probably not receiving benefits because until they reach the age of 18, your income, your assets are being deemed against them and counted against them. Once they turn 18, unless they have money in their bank account that puts them over the limit, if they're disabled, they'll be eligible for SSI.
So having, they were talking about able accounts earlier today. Having an able account, for example, that will be against, can go against him having benefits in the future?
So she's asking about ABLE accounts. I'm going to get to ABLE by the end of this, so we'll make sure we have enough time, but ABLE's play with special needs trusts well.
Can you have more than one person handling the trust?
The question is, can you have more than one person handling the trust? More than one trustee is what we call it. Absolutely. Yeah, you as the person setting up the trust get to decide. Now, you'll talk to your attorney, whoever's drafting this trust for you. They'll tell you the pros and cons of why you may or may not want more than one person, but absolutely, there's no limitations on that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a child who was diagnosed at 5 years old with a learning disability, IEPs all through college, including the special needs college.
Mm-hmm.
Then graduated and struggled with undiagnosed mental illness for the next 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And only recently now, at 33, was diagnosed with mental illness issues,
Mm-hmm.
which is why he hasn't been able to be employed for the past 7 years and hold the job. Is it too late to get qualified for SSDI?
Well, it may be difficult to get qualified for that disabled adult child benefit because remember, you have to prove the disability happened before age 22.
Well, it's been documented.
So then if it's been,
Disability from 5 years old to 20.
so
And mental health disability for working was just recently.
Social Security doesn't delineate. They say 22. So if you can show that he was disabled pursuant to their definition prior to age 22, you could potentially get him eligible for that DAC benefit. If he's disabled now, he should be eligible for SSI though, as long as he meets the asset limitations.
What happens if you move out of the state? Does anything affect this?
So all the benefits I'm talking about, with the exception of Medicaid, are federal. So Social Security, Medicare, they're all federal. The rules are federal, so they're all the same throughout the states. Every state, though, does operate their own and administer their own Medicaid. And so each state's going to have different rules regarding their Medicaid. So typically with the rules, special needs trust, they're pretty similar from state to state. There may be some nuances, but as far as the eligibility and the different programs through Medicaid, it may differ. I see a hand here and then back there. Yeah, we're going to get to pooled trust. Yep. Not necessarily. So she's asking, she has 2 children and someone that they could potentially get a military retirement benefit from when that person passes away. She's asking if it should go into the trust, only if it needs to. Again, if it's income, you know, it may be, depending on how much it is, it may knock them off of some kind of Medicaid benefit. They're still eligible for SSDI, they're still eligible for DAC. The time you need to put the money into the trust is when there's an asset limit of $2,000. And then in that case, they can't save money, and so a special needs trust can do that, an ABLE account can do that. Yes, sir?
You talked about first party and third party trusts. Is there a hybrid where the trust receives both the disabled person's income stream and
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. And historically, we've said no. They've got to be separate. Although recently, and this is just way over even my head, there's attorneys in my industry who have interpreted the Social Security rules and the federal regulations to say, no, if you can delineate the two, you may be okay. I say to be safe, don't risk it. Because with a first-party trust, it's a little different. A first-party trust, it's got to be irrevocable. A third party doesn't always have to be. The funds that go into the trust are the funds of the individuals. I guess arguably anybody could put money into it, but why would you? Because we'll see it in a second. Well, it doesn't say that. There's a Medicaid payback upon passing. And so any money left in the trust upon the beneficiary's passing is subject to a lien by the Medicaid agency. What are the most common forms of money that would go into a first-party trust? Okay, I have a child with a disability. Where is this money going to come from that we would need to do this trust? Well, there's a couple of different ways. One, they could get an unplanned inheritance. Say they have a parent, grandparent, uncle, aunt, whoever, who left them money wanting to be nice, but they left them money, but they didn't set up a third-party special needs trust. They just said, I want Johnny to get the money. Well, if it goes to Johnny, there's no one ringing that bell. It's now Johnny's money. And so now that it's Johnny's money, it's got to go into the first-party special needs trust subject to that Medicaid payback. Personal injury award. You know, there could be a medical malpractice, injury at birth. There could be a car accident. Those are common ways that an individual with disabilities could get money. And then there's earnings and savings, which, you know, first-party special needs trust certainly can be used for that. But there's other tools like ABLE that may be more appropriate. But that's typically how money would come from the individual. Here's our ABCs. So it was 1, 2, 3 ABCs. So these right here, this is the federal statute. Not that you care. I'm just telling you why. This is our presentation name. D4A is the section of the statute that talks about an individual self-settled or first-party special needs trust. D4B is a qualified income trust. I'm not even going to get into that. And then D4C is what's called a pooled trust. A pooled trust is a type of special needs trust that already exists. It's created by a nonprofit pursuant to this federal statute, and it's a pool, meaning there's multiple people who can jump into it. And rather than having to draft a trust yourself or have an attorney draft yourself, you just go to this pooled trust company, fill out their paperwork, and join their already existing trust. Benefit of a pooled trust, it's cheaper, right? You're not having an attorney have to draft the paperwork, and then it's pooled, right? So I'm affiliated with the Guardian Pooled Trust. We have a couple thousand beneficiaries all over the country. We take their money, not that we commingle it. They all have separate accounts, and it's accounted for separately, but for investment purposes, we get to put it all together, and we get much better returns because you now have this big chunk of money you can go and do things investment-wise. So that's the benefit of a pooled trust. Now, the most traditional pooled trust that you think of is a first-party trust. So again, it's the individual's money, but there are third-party pooled special needs trusts as well. So if you want to think of an economical way to set up a special needs trust for your loved one, you can do a very simple will. And in that will, you can say, write this one line, I want my son or daughter's inheritance to go to this pooled special needs trust for their benefit. You don't have to pay an attorney to draft this big, complex special needs trust. Downside is, you're now giving the money to a third party who is a professional. You know, we have employees, so we charge a fee. That's going to be a downside. You have a professional trustee, they're going to charge a fee, right? And then, whereas if you have an individual trust rather than a pooled trust, you can name who you want to be the trustee. If it's a family member, brother, cousin, well, they may not charge a fee. They're all different. So there's typically an administrative fee to set up, to join it, like a one-time fee just to join it. And then most pooled trusts charge a percentage of the amount of assets that you put in there. 1%, 5%? Yeah, I've never seen it as high as 5%, but I've seen usually ranges from like 3% all the way down, depending on how high or how much money's in the trust.
And that's every year?
Yeah, again, each trust does it differently. Some charge it quarterly, some charge it annually. But yeah, if you Google pooled trusts, Florida, there's probably 20 of us out there. You can compare who's got what. And if you have an attorney that is competent in special needs planning, and you've decided that rather than do a trust, you want to do a pooled trust, they're going to be able to make recommendations and tell you which one they think is the most appropriate for you. A little bit more about our self-settled trust. It used to be prior to December 13th, 2016, that an individual couldn't set up their own trust. That was changed, thankfully. So now an individual can set up the trust themselves, but the other people who can set up a first-party special needs trust. So a third-party special needs trust, remember, anybody but the individual on benefits can set up the trust. With a first party, the individual can set it up, their parent, grandparent, legal guardian, or by the court. And again, there has to be a mandatory Medicaid payback. So while they're receiving Medicaid, Medicaid's keeping track. And when they pass away, if there's any money in that trust, the trustee has to go to Medicaid and say, hey, Medicaid, how much do we owe you? If what they owe is more than what's in the trust, Medicaid gets everything. But if there's enough to pay back Medicaid, potentially the rest could go out to beneficiaries. A little bit more about pooled trust. I think I just talked about this. Big one, nonprofit organizations, they have to be set up by that. That's our pooled trust at the bottom there, guardianpooledtrust.org. All right. So advantages and disadvantages of self-settled SNTs. Again, I think we talked about this. You maintain government benefits. Keep your money. I say that with quotation marks. Yeah, you get to keep your money. I think what I mean by that is you don't, in a lot of cases, people will save money and then they'll get over this $2,000 limit. They're like, oh, crud, I got to now just either go off my benefits until I spend it and get below $2,000, or I get to keep it by putting it in this trust. Yes, you get to keep it, but it comes with restrictions. And then again, it provides for their benefit, for their supplemental needs. It provides for things that perhaps their income stream, maybe Medicaid, is unable to provide for. Disadvantages, trust assets may be restricted. Depending on what benefits you're on, it may be limited to what the trust assets could be used for. For instance, someone on SSI, if you're receiving SSI, and how many of you have dealt with SSI before? Raise your hand. Oh, we've got quite a few. You may or may not know this, but if you have someone who's on SSI living in your house and you don't charge them rent, or if you pay for their food, Medicaid is going to reduce their check by a maximum of 1/3. So, and the rule is that if they receive that benefit, food or shelter expenses, if they receive, the SSI recipient receives that, meaning without paying for it, they receive it for free, or if someone else or a third party is paying for that benefit, like a trust. So if the trust was paying rent for a person on SSI, their check will be reduced up to a maximum of 1/3. So whatever 1/3 of $794 is, that's what their check will be reduced by. So it's restricted in that way. Well, sometimes it makes sense. We're going to have the trust pay the rent because the maximum reduction is $200 and whatever dollars, but the rent's $800. So the trust is paying $800, you're losing $200. I think it makes sense for the trust to pay the rent. We're going to take our reduction. There's a way around that. We're going to talk about it in a second. Can't give money directly to a beneficiary. It's not a bank account. It's not like they can go and just, I want a couple $100 for walking around money. With most Medicaid programs and with SSI for sure, any money that's received is considered unearned income. It's going to affect your benefit. Now the trust can pay for things indirectly or maybe directly. Rather than giving the money to the individual, we have to get creative. How do we use the money in the trust? What are we paying for? Are we paying a doctor's bill? Write a check to the doctor. Don't give it to our SSI person because they're going to get its income to them. Let's just pay the doctor bill. If they have a credit card, they can use a credit card, and the trust can just pay off that credit card at the end of the month. That's another way to access the funds. There can be challenges to selecting a trustee, right? I mean, we have family members that we think will step up, hopefully, maybe not. Can we trust them? Do we want to burden our family members with being in that position? If we're looking at a professional, who is this professional? This guy Cole in Clearwater. I don't know this dude. Like, you know, there may be those concerns. What do they charge? And then again, they can be subject to a claim at the end. Did you have a question?
When you said they pay off the credit card, were you talking specifically just that medical bill or anything?
So one of the ways, the question is, when I gave the example of how to access the trust funds, one of the common ways we do it is if the individual, the person on SSI, can qualify for a credit card, it's usually a great way for them to access the funds because they have a credit card in their name, they can go use the credit card, and then the trust can pay off the credit card. It's not income to them because they never received money. They made purchases, we paid off the credit card. You said, can it be used for anything? Sure, anything that's not going to affect their benefits, right? So if they buy food and the trust pays off the credit card, you now have a third party paying for one of those food or shelter expenses that could potentially reduce their benefit. Right, so she asked, it can't be a gift either. That's one thing that maybe I didn't mention is that in most cases, especially, well, with the first party trust, they're called sole benefit trusts. So that means the money in the trust can only be used for the sole benefit of the individual. You can't buy gifts. So I tell that a lot to people who are joining our pooled trust, and they're trying to figure out if they want to do it. Just keep in mind, if you regularly tithe to your church, if you're used to giving, you know, your mom a Christmas gift every year, unfortunately the pooled trust money can't pay for that because Social Security tells us that it's for the sole benefit of the individual. With a third-party trust, you have a little bit more latitude in that regard, but that's the idea behind the trust anyways, right? We want to make sure it's there for our person who needs it.
So if you have a special needs trust, but you have, my son is going to be qualifying under the adult disability, then I don't need to worry about the food and stuff.
She's asking, her child's going to be eligible for that disabled adult child benefit. You're right. And whether I need to be worried about somebody paying for his food or shelter, no, because that's an SSI rule. And so that was just one example of why a trust, how the use of the funds in a trust could be restricted. Now, like I said, and I mentioned, there's a way around that. And I also said that ABLE accounts play well with special needs trusts, and here's why. First, I think you probably know what ABLE accounts are. If you don't, here's a quick overview. It stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. It's a 529A account. Those of you who have college savings account for your children, it's under the 529 part of the tax code. They created a special subsection for folks who may never go to college, but we still want to be able to save for their future. 529A. It was signed by President Obama in 2014. Florida started our ABLE in July of 2016. ABLE United, they're awesome, they're here. John Finch is a great guy. He knows everything there is to know about ABLE. And again, it's administered by our prepaid college board because it falls under that. ABLE accounts are limited, though, to $15,000 per year. So a special needs trust, there's no limit to what you can put in a special needs trust. An ABLE account, it is limited to $15,000 per year. If you want to open one, go to ABLE United, or even better yet, go out there. I think they're giving you free money if you open one up today. Here's the big one. Exempted for SSI, Medicaid, food assistance, and housing. Well, that's not the big one. Anyways, it's treated the same like a special needs trust is. Money in the account's not going to affect your benefits. It can grow tax-free, so it can be invested and grow tax-free where a special needs trust can't. If you're on SSI, the total in your account can't exceed $100,000. $15,000 a year, you do the math, it takes several years before you got to that amount. If you're not receiving SSI and you're just on some kind of Medicaid program, the limit is currently $418,000. One of the big limitations is, though, you have to be disabled prior to age 26. So if something happens, say you didn't become disabled until age 28, you probably don't qualify for an ABLE account. There is technically a Medicaid payback upon death. The way ABLE currently treats it is that they follow the state of Florida's Medicaid payback, estate payback. Basically what that means is if someone dies in Florida on Medicaid, there's no payback unless you're over the age 55. Not a huge thing to worry about. I don't know if they've changed that yet. As far as I know, they haven't, but John would probably be able to tell you better on that one. You can only have one ABLE account. You get one ABLE account. There's ABLE accounts or different ABLE programs throughout the country. Ours is ABLE United, but regardless of which one you join, you can only have one. Recently, they've added that you can actually add more than $15,000 a year. There are some exceptions when it comes from income. Again, I'll let John talk to you about that. These are the different expenses that you can pay out of an ABLE account. Although you may say this is limiting, that it's not everything, I think it was Social Security that said they're not really looking. I think you can fit almost anything in one of those categories. So it's pretty broad is what you could use the money for. But the big one for us, let me see, I don't think I have that on here. No, the big one for special needs trust, though, is that if you pay for food or shelter expenses out of an ABLE account, it does not reduce your check like it would if you paid for them out of a special needs trust. And so that's why I said as special needs trusts play well with ABLE accounts, because maybe the special needs trust can't pay for it, but the special needs trust can put money into an ABLE account. And that ABLE account can then pay for that food or shelter expense, and they don't get the reduction. They get to keep it. The other benefit for an ABLE account is it allows ease of access to the funds. We talked about a special needs trust not being a bank account. You can't just go get cash out. ABLE accounts, you can connect directly to your bank account. So you have an individual who's on SSI or is disabled, and they have a bank account that their check goes into, and they have an ABLE account, and they want to buy something that falls under one of these categories. They just go online, they authorize a transfer into their account, then they take their debit card and they go purchase it. I think I saw a hand in the back there. I'm sorry, I missed the question. I can't hear you.
Can it be used like a shelter for, like a savings account?
Yeah, so I think the idea behind these was that it would be a savings account for folks who are on these mean-based asset tested benefits. They limited it to $15,000. They may change that, but it's up to $15,000 a year. So it's not a great tool necessarily for estate planning, right? So if you're a parent and you want to say, oh, I don't need a special needs trust, I'm just going to leave everything that my kid's going to get to their ABLE account. Remember, it's $15,000 a year. If what you're leaving them is more than $15,000, it's not going to work. Yeah.
For housing, do you have a situation where you could possibly get, say, a home Habitat for Humanity? How would you use, say, either the ABLE account or the third needs trust to fund, say, the interest payment that you make on the Habitat for Humanity?
So the question was, how would we use the funds in a trust to pay for it? So Habitat for Humanity house, they charge you something?
They charge you interest.
Apparently they charge you. Again, as long as the use of the money for an ABLE account, as long as it falls under one of these categories, I think interest for housing would certainly fall under one of these, or it's for the benefit of our beneficiary. In the case of a special needs trust, it can be used for that. You know, there's other considerations that we take into account when we're administering special needs trusts, right? It can be used for a whole number of things, just about anything you can think of. We got to be careful. We don't want to mess up their SSI, but there's a lot of other considerations. How much money's in there? How old is the person? How long do we want this money to last? Yeah, I can buy you a Mercedes, but if I do that, how much is going to be left at the end of the day for all your other needs. And so those are all the considerations you take into account. Yes?
All right, so I set up a will that says, upon my death, everything goes to a special needs trust, blah, blah. So then I'm told, and then also my sisters said the same thing in their will to him, and a lot of people are saying it goes to him. Now, so I was told, you better set up a special needs trust before you die for him. So I'm like, okay, so I called a lawyer to set up a special needs trust before he dies. But they said, you don't want to do that. You want to set up a special needs trust for or a living trust for me. Let everybody give the money to me, and then upon my death, it goes to a special needs.
Yeah, I don't recommend that. So here's the scenario. She's being told a few different things. And really what it comes down to is when we set up the special needs trust and how it's set up. And this is something that you work through with your attorney. And I'll tell you how I do it with my clients. When they come into my office and they say, I have a child with a disability, I want to make sure that there's money left to them, but I don't want to affect their benefits. All right, we need a special needs trust. Okay, how are we going to accomplish this? What makes the most sense? Okay, who is leaving the money? Just me. Is there anybody else out there that you think could possibly leave them money? No. Okay, well then maybe we just set up a special needs trust that is in your will or in your revocable living trust. Great. It accomplishes your goal. When you pass away, that share is going to go into that trust. The downside is that trust doesn't exist until you die. So if there is anybody else out there that wants to leave them money, there's no way for them to do that using that trust, right? And so when I ask the client, is there anybody out there that might want to leave it? Well, yeah, you know what? Grandma said they might want to leave some money, and Uncle Joe said they might want to leave some money. I'm saying, well, rather than having Grandma and Uncle Joe have to do their own will, pay an attorney to do a special needs trust within their will, maybe we just create a trust now. And it's the Johnny Special Needs Trust, and here it is. It exists today. There may not be anything in it, but it exists. And then you, in your will, say, you know what, anything that I want to leave to Johnny, leave it to Johnny's Special Needs Trust that I already created. And then Grandma, she does the same thing. You know what, she already made this trust. It's called Johnny's Special Needs Trust. I want this to go into that. And Uncle does the same thing. And so that's really why you would do it that way. I think in your case, if there are other people who you think could potentially leave money to your child, you want to make sure that either one, they're creating a special needs trust within their estate plan, or two, you've already created one, you tell them what it is, and that way they can go to their lawyer and get it set up.
Is it better for them to give the money all to me, that I can freely spend it on him without the restrictions, and then
So the
when I die, it goes on, and also because if you put too much in the special needs trust, then the government can get all that Medicaid money.
So the question is it better, rather than them leave it to the special needs trust, just to leave it to her, and she'll make sure it's used for his benefit? Certainly can do that. I'll be honest with you, though. You spending the money on your child and a special needs trust spending the money on your child has the same restrictions. It's all determined by what benefit programs they're on. They don't care if a trust is spending the money or if you're spending the money. Medicaid, SSI, if they have restrictions, it's all based on what programs and what the rules are. It doesn't matter if you're providing it. Trusts don't have those restrictions either. If you're the trustee of the trust, you can go take them to Disney World or do whatever. Yeah, I mean, the only time the only restrictions that SSI and Medicaid have are if they're on SSI, you can't use it for food or shelter, can't give them money directly, that kind of thing. And again, if you're setting up a third-party special needs trust, there's not going to be a Medicaid payback, so that's not a worry you're going to have. The downside of just disinheriting someone is that when I say disinheriting, you may, let's say, in your case, rather than leave it to a special needs trust, say leave it to you. It's just in your name. Well, now it's in your name. I'm sure you're going to do the right thing, but sometimes there's things that are out of your control. What if you get a divorce? That's your money. That's part of the divorce. What if you get into a car accident, someone sues you? That's liability, and you may have to pay for it out. So there's reasons why you might not necessarily do that. I have a lot of people who say, you know, I'm just going to disinherit them. I'm going to leave it to their brother. Their brother's going to do the right thing. I believe you. I believe brother's going to do the right thing. But there's things that might be out of brother's control. So you want to be careful. That's why the trust is there. It protects that. Yeah, so that's the difference, one of the big differences, and I think we have that up here. Yeah, so if you look, sorry, cameraman, I'm going to move. This is a little chart that kind of talks about the differences between the ABLE accounts and the trust. And the question was, does it grow tax-free? Well, the ABLE account, yes. Green means yes. It's the only one on here that can grow tax-free. Huge benefit. Can grow tax-free so long as you use it for those disability expenses, that list of items that I had up there before. Special needs trusts are taxed just like any other trust. Not a tax guy, but they're different tax brackets for trusts. And so if there are earnings, they're, yes, sir, in the back.
So my wife spends probably 20 hours a week managing the affairs of our son who does not live in our city.
Yeah.
In our passing and funding of special needs trust, can a appointed guardian family member be paid for the time that they will spend, the considerable time that they will spend managing his affairs and the trust?
Absolutely. So the question was, you said your wife, right? Your wife is currently doing a lot of work. And when they're gone, can the trust money be used to pay somebody else to do that work that your wife's doing? Absolutely. Absolutely. Whether it's being a guardian, whether it's being a trustee, whether it's being just a caregiver, companion, whatever. Absolutely. Yep. Yes, sir.
Yes, I just want clarification. With the ABLE account, is that can be part of the trust?
So the question is the ABLE account part of the trust? ABLE account is completely separate. An ABLE account is, think of it like a bank account. You go to Able United, you set it up, it exists. It's going to have an account number. It's going to have a way to make deposits into it. What I was talking about earlier is they play well together because a lot of times we have trusts that may have, remember, you can only have $15,000 a year into an ABLE account. You have trusts that are funding ABLE accounts each year because it allows the person to have direct access to the funds. It could be used to pay for food or shelter, all the things that the special needs trust can't do.
Just a quick follow-up to that then. So when people, if other family members are going to be donating money or stuff to the disabled child, would they prefer to be put into an ABLE account or into the trust?
How much is it going to be, right? So it's $15,000 a year from any source. So total. You give $15,000, that's all they can get this year. Calendar year basis. So they can leave it to an ABLE if they want to, but if they have a trust, it can be much more than that $15,000. Yep, sorry.
Can if a spouse is taking care of the disabled child, can they draw money from the ABLE account for their work on behalf?
Question is, if someone's providing care to the child, can they be paid out of an ABLE account for that care? Hold on, let me see. Does it fall under one of these? Assistive technology, health. I mean, I think that falls under health, right? I would say yes. Yeah, I mean, these are pretty broad categories. You could probably argue. And again, I think Social Security said they're not even really looking at that. I can't guarantee that they won't, but let me get one in the back right here. Yes, ma'am.
Why is there a Medicaid payback for ABLE?
That's a good question. I don't think there will always be one. But the way Medicaid payback, at least, she says it might have changed, and I may be wrong here, so I'm not the ABLE guy, so double check with them. But last that I understood it was that the way ABLE when someone passes away, whatever's left in the account is payable to their estate. And in Florida, the way the Medicaid estate payback is that if you receive Medicaid after the age of 55, there will be a payback based on what you received after the age of 55. Those funds from ABLE would be used to pay back that. Again, it may have changed. You may want to double check that. They may have gotten rid of that requirement, but that's how it used to be last time I was dealing with it. So I don't think, if it hasn't changed, I think the goal is that there is to be no payback by ABLE. And it'll get there eventually if it already hasn't. Yeah, one more? Go ahead.
Okay, again, getting with the inheritance, so if someone gave my son inheritance, but I have set up the one that's not funded until after my death, but if he's not on SSDI, do I need to worry about it?
The question is she set up a special needs trust for her son? It's an individual one that already exists, the one we talked about, Johnny's trust, that anybody can leave money to. And your question is he's on some kind of SSDI? He's receiving an adult disabled child benefit, which we know doesn't have an asset or income limitation. Well, earned income, let's just say asset limitation. Do we need to worry about it? I don't know, maybe not. Is he on Medicaid? If not, maybe not. Is he ever going to need Medicaid? If so, it may be a reason why to put it in a special needs trust. Can he manage his own money? That's a big consideration. Remember, special needs trust, the primary purpose of them is to protect those benefits. There's other added benefits for the special needs trust. If we have someone who can't manage the money themselves, they may be working, but maybe they're bad with money. And we don't want them to inherit this. We do it for folks that aren't disabled all the time. You know, I do traditional estate planning. I have someone who has multiple children. Maybe one's disabled, maybe one's not. That other one might be in college, partying it up, and we don't want them to inherit 200 grand when I die. Maybe we want to wait until they reach a certain age. And so we build in provisions because they're unable to handle the money themselves. And so that might be another reason why you might want to consider it. Did I see another one? Sorry, yes.
So, special needs trust can have a beneficiary, no? Like, let me go back. I do one for my son that is disabled, and he passed away. Can everything on that trust go to my other son?
Yes, the question is set up a special needs trust for her disabled son. He passes away and there's money left in the trust. Yes, you, when you set it up, get to determine where that money goes. I'll tell you the most common third-party special needs trust that I set up, well, there's two. One is the one where we have a will and that trust doesn't happen until I die. And the other is that standalone trust, the individual Johnny trust that anybody can leave money to, and it exists today. In that trust, a lot of times mom and dad, they set it up. They're the trustees, the guys who are in charge of it, and then they're the primary beneficiaries. If the child passes away before they do, the money just goes back to them. And then maybe they're not around, we put in a provision that it goes to the siblings or whoever else we want underneath. Yep.
So if he has an able account too, and he's under can the able account be under the special needs trust?
No, able accounts are separate. So able accounts, completely separate entity. Yeah, they have their own rules. And I'm going to go ask John so I know for sure what happens when someone passes away, if they're still paying it to the estate, and whether it would be subject to a Medicaid lien. If they have a way to add beneficiaries to the able account, I think then it would not be subject to a Medicaid lien. We'll just have to check.
So basically, well, you're not the expert on that, but
No.
the account, the benefit from it is that it's tax-free. Any growth on the account is tax-free.
Yeah, so the benefits of the able account, that's one of them, is that the money can grow tax-free. The money can be used for just about anything that falls into one of those categories. Big one is when someone's on SSI, you can use it for food and shelter without facing a reduction of their SSI. And then it allows almost direct access from the beneficiary, if they're capable, to grab that money down into their bank account, where a trust, you don't have that access. Do I have one in the back there? Right. So right here's the rule on that. If you're on SSI, you can accumulate up to $100,000 without affecting your benefits. If you're not on SSI, but you're on some kind of state Medicaid, maybe the iBudget program, some other waiver program, you can accumulate up to $418,000. Those are the numbers currently. $15,000 a year, it'd take you a while to get up to $418,000. So, hi.
Would I be eligible to receive DIC in the future if I am working?
Yes, you can receive DAC benefits and still be, the question was, will she be eligible for DAC benefits in the future if she's working? The answer is yes, so long as you don't exceed the, what do they call it, substantial gainful activity number. And at Social Security here, it should be on that really busy slide from earlier. This one here. Where's the, let's see if I can. Yeah, no, there's an SGA number. It was around 12,000 last year, so it's probably a little bit more than that. But they look at your gross monthly income. If you earn more than what their SGA limit was, let's call it $1,200 a month. Not 12,000, sorry. Let's call it $1,200 a month. If you're earning more than that for a long enough period of time, they're going to say you're not disabled and therefore you're not eligible for our DAC benefits. But if you're earning less than that, you can absolutely receive both. So let me see. What else do we have that we didn't get to? Just quickly on this chart, again, this is just ABLE versus the D4A, remember, is a self-settled trust, but it's an individual trust. Then we have the D4C, which is our pooled trust, and then we have our third-party special needs trust, which could be either pooled or individual. Who can establish it? The beneficiary can establish the first three. They cannot establish a third-party trust. Is there a limit to annual contributions? Only with ABLE. Special needs trust, you can put in as much as you want. Medicaid payback upon death, question mark on the ABLE. definitely on the D4A and D4C. Those are your first party trusts, and there's no Medicaid payback on a third party special needs trust. Can you pay for food or shelter without impacting benefits? The only one that can do that is the ABLE account. Grows tax-free, the only one that can do that is the ABLE account. No lifetime limits on account size. Again, remember if you're on SSI, ABLE accounts are limited to $100,000 for SSI, $418 for Medicaid. The rest of them you can put in as much as you want. Are they exempt from creditors' claims? Well, they've determined yes on the ABLE accounts, which is good. Creditors' claims meaning somebody gets into a car accident, they're getting sued, you now have a creditor. Or they racked up a credit card bill and you have this trust. Can the credit card sue for get money out of the ABLE or the trust? Not for the ABLE, not for the third party. Depends on the other ones. There's arguments both ways, but they're not necessarily always protected. Allows for disbursements after death. We didn't really get into that, but really what that comes down to is when you have a first party special needs trust, whether it's an individual trust or a pooled trust, if the person passes away, it's very limited on what the money can be used for after death without first satisfying the Medicaid lien. One of the sad things is that the federal law does not even provide for burial. So you can't even use the first party money to bury the person before you satisfy the Medicaid lien. We're hoping to change that. Maybe it will one day, but it currently is the rule that you can't do that. Third party money can be used for just about anything prior to distributions to the final beneficiaries. Low fees, ABLE's as low as it gets. I don't know what it currently is, but it's pretty low. D4A just depends, right? D4A is an individual first-party trust, not a pooled one, and depends if you have a professional trustee or if you have an individual, family member serving. Depends on the fees. And distribution standard broader than just sole benefit. Remember, first-party money can only be used for the sole benefit of the beneficiary, and so it's restricted, can't give gifts, can't tithe to our church. And then the ABLE accounts and the third parties are a little more loose in that regard. I have run out of time, but I think the next session doesn't start until, I think, maybe 4. So if you guys do have questions, I'll stick around while I'm packing my bag, and we can even step outside if we need to. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming, guys.